Good evening, this is Brass Tax. I'm Zaka Jacob. Delhi Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia has been sent to 5 days of CBI custody. He was produced before the Rouse Avenue court in Delhi today. The CBI says they have ample proof against Sisodia for changing the excise policy, causing a loss to the exchequer and damaging evidence. The Aam Aadmi Party agitated today outside the Rouse Avenue court, but they were pushed back by the Delhi police. The party says this action reeks of pure political vendetta. But first, what happened in Sisodia's day in court?
Liquorgate scam accused number 1. Delhi Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia appearing in court a day after he was arrested by the CBI. After a heated 2-hour-long hearing in which the CBI argued that Sisodia had been evasive during questioning, the court granted the agency 5 days custody. Sisodia will remain in CBI custody till the 4th of March now. While Sisodia was in court, chaos erupted in the capital. Workers of the ruling Aam Aadmi Party gathered in large numbers at the party's headquarters. Some even sported handcuffs, claiming that fake cases were being filed against AAP leaders every day without any proof. They tried to march towards BJP's office, but came face to face with dozens of Rapid Action Force personnel and police who were deployed near AAP's office. Some AAP workers tried to breach police barricades and were promptly detained and dragged into buses.
Adequate presence of police personnel, in fact the Rapid Action Force, CISF and CRP as well. And as of now, this is the situation where from both the sides, RAF is pushing these protesters back, while these protesters are also pushing these personnel. And as of now, the situation is in control.
It wasn't just in Delhi. AAP workers held a pan-India dharna against Sisodia's arrest.
We will continue to protest and demand that Manish Sisodia be released. This following the arrest of Manish Sisodia, and say that protests will escalate in Chennai as well in the coming days if Sisodia is not released at the earliest.
AAP alleged that Sisodia's arrest is a sign of BJP's nervousness.
अरविंद केजरीवाल और आम आदमी पार्टी की लोकप्रियता पूरे देश में बढ़ रही है, उससे बौखला कर ये कार्रवाई की जा रही है। ये तानाशाही की इंतहा है। मैंने कल भी कहा था, आज फिर दोहरा रहा हूं। और मोदी जी, इस तानाशाही का अंत जरूर होगा।
The BJP hit back, saying Sisodia is paying the price for his crimes.
कट्टर बेईमान और अराजक अपराध पार्टी ना संविधान का सम्मान करती है, ना न्यायालय का सम्मान करती है, ना जनता का सम्मान करती है और ना कानून का सम्मान करती है। पापी आपको भी पता है कि एक्यूज नंबर 1 कट्टर बेईमान है, और आज ये आदेश आने के बाद ये बात सिद्ध हो गई है।
So is it a political vendetta or the law catching up on Manish Sisodia? Bureau Report, CNN News 18.
All right, so let's break down this case for you, starting with what exactly is the liquor scam. Now, it involved the Aam Aadmi Party's government's excise policy, which came into effect in November 2021. As per that policy, Delhi was divided into 32 zones, each zone having 27 liquor vends. It essentially stopped the government, which was selling liquor up until then. Only private liquor shops would run in the city, and each municipal ward would have about a couple of vends. AAP also made the rules flexible for licensees, like allowing them to offer discounts and set their own prices instead of MRP that's fixed by the government. After the policy was implemented, the government's revenue increased by about 27%, generating about 890 crore. But according to the CBI, liquor companies were involved in the framing of the 2021 liquor policy, for which the CBI claims in its FIR that kickbacks were paid. The agency says that shop owners were given big discounts, and this cheated the government of revenue. They contend that many ineligible vendors got licenses after paying bribes to the Delhi government. And heavy discounts were given on imported beer, because of which the government lost out on significant taxes. The excise policy also, which was later scrapped right after the CBI announced this probe, but it has opened a can of worms. While according to the CBI, Delhi Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia is the face of this scam, there are other players as well. Former Excise Commissioner Arava Gopikrishna has been accused of giving favourable licenses. In his statement to the CBI, Sisodia's former secretary C. Arvind also said that the draft GOM report, which was given to him in March 21, after Sisodia called him to his residence of Arvind Kejriwal. Liquor businessman Sameer Mahindra, who was the first person to be arrested in this case, was allegedly actively involved in irregularities in the excise policy. And the final nail on the coffin was Dinesh Arora, a former associate of Manish Sisodia, who turned a prover in this case and confirmed that Delhi's Deputy Chief Minister informally made changes to the excise policy. But the chain of events that culminated in Sisodia's arrest involved three crucial factors. Number one, according to CBI officials, crucial files which contain the details about how and why the new excise policy was drafted, who were the signatories, and the discussions leading to that decision are missing. And when Sisodia was asked about it, he had a standard response, "I don't know." At least 18 mobile phones and 4 SIM cards were used by Sisodia between August and September of 2022. According to the CBI, none of these phones or these SIM cards were made available, and Sisodia did not give a satisfactory answer as to where they are. And the third and final piece of the puzzle was Dinesh Arora, a close associate of Sisodia, who the CBI says later turned a prover in the case. Arora confirmed that instructions about changes in excise policy came informally from Manish Sisodia. So what does Sisodia's arrest mean for the Aam Aadmi Party, for Arvind Kejriwal, and for the Delhi government? At the moment, Sisodia is the most important minister in the Delhi government because he holds as many as 18 portfolios out of 33. His reach, his remit was expanded considerably after his cabinet colleague Satyendra Jain was arrested 6 months ago on charges of money laundering. The importance of Sisodia to the party and to the Delhi government cannot be overstated. In case Sisodia is behind bars for long, the party will face the daunting task of distributing his work. Sisodia's arrest comes weeks ahead of Delhi government's budget session. It's expected to be in the first half of March. Manish Sisodia has been presenting Delhi's budget for every year since AAP came to government in 2014. This time, it could well be Kejriwal presenting the budget. Sisodia also is AAP convener Kejriwal's most trusted lieutenant. The arrest comes at a time when Kejriwal is taking a foray into national politics. AAP is the only non-Congress opposition which has two governments in states, in Punjab and in Delhi. And now Kejriwal is trying to expand the AAP's prospects in the upcoming elections in Karnataka, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. We're getting a piece of breaking news before we go to our guests. Sources telling CNN News18 that the CBI will confront Manish Sisodia with what they claim is evidence about alleged kickbacks in the liquor scam. The allegation is that 100 crore rupees were received as kickbacks by Vijay Nair, who is allegedly a close associate of Manish Sisodia, also arrested in this case. The CBI's contention is much of this money was diverted for the Goa election campaign. Let me go across to my colleague Arunima, who's more on this. The question is, yes, the CBI is claiming this, but on what basis is the CBI confident that this can be proven in a court of law?
So they claim that during questioning of Vijay Nair and also during surveillance of the South Group, as the group is called, these are accused who are from the southern part of the country. During the surveillance and evidence gathering, what has thrown up is that right at the first meeting, Vijay Nair, whom the CBI calls one of the key associates of Manish Sisodia, he apparently asked for 100 crore advance payment, and the payment was to change the margin of profit to 12%. That is the first allegation. The second allegation is that this 100 crore kickback was then turned and utilized towards Goa election funding. And for that, CBI claimed that at least there is one instance of a payment of 70 lakh rupees made in cash to surveyors who were carrying out a survey on the behalf of Aam Aadmi Party. And the second instance of money being paid in cash against false bills to the advertisers whose holdings were used or whose services were used in the Goa election. So the advertisers have come and told CBI that they were asked to make on bill much lesser payment, and this payment was made in cash. So these are the two basic reasons why CBI believes that this 100 crore kickback was diverted towards election funding. They of course confront with evidence what Vijay Nair and the other accused have told them, with the chat records that they have recovered. And an important point that they are making is that this meeting that happened at Taj Mansingh Hotel here in Delhi, in which the South Group allegedly came and met, they feel that it was here that the nitty-gritties of the payment and the margin of profit was decided. They do want to ask Mr. Sisodia whether he was aware of this group meeting. How is it that he told the excise commissioner to approve the second application of one of those who was part of the South Group, Mr. Mahindra, How did he as a minister know that he was going to file a second
right.
application? See, intention that this was a conspiracy.
Okay, Arunima, we'll leave it at that. We'll see how this plays out for Mr. Sisodia and the Delhi government, the Aam Aadmi Party. Let me now go across to our guest, RP Singh, BJP spokesperson, joining us. Prithvi Reddy, AAP spokesperson. Aman Lekhi is former ASG and senior advocate. And Abhishek Sudhir is a political analyst. Let me start with you, Prithvi Reddy. You heard from my colleague Arunima. You've seen what the CBI is alleging in the FIR and what they said in court today. Essentially, they are saying that this profit of margin or for private vendors, private wholesalers, was raised from 5% to 12%. And in return for this change of policy, Vijay Nair, who was a close associate of Manish Sisodia, associated with the Aam Aadmi Party and the Delhi government, asked for 100 crore kickbacks. And this, the CBI claims, was used in the Goa election campaign.
Hi, Zaka. Thank you for having us. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead.
So I would like to start by saying I think yesterday it was not Manish Sisodia who was arrested. It was democracy that was arrested. I'm saying this because I firmly believe, and the party firmly believes, that this is a reaction of the BJP, which is a fear of the Aam Aadmi Party. The reason I say that is because Aam Aadmi Party has been standing and winning elections purely based on their work, and the BJP has not been able to compete or show any work of their own. Now, coming to the arrest of Manish Sisodia, let's understand that it's been over 8 months since the FIR was filed. There have been 2 charge sheets filed since then. Both of them do not contain the name of Manish Sisodia. If at all they are accusing a cartelization, that is not a crime under IPC, and that has to be investigated in the Competitive Commission. They have raided Manish Sisodia, they've raided other leaders, they have found nothing. The point is, seems to be a reaction to all their political maneuvers in Delhi during the mayor and deputy mayor election, since they have failed badly.
So let me ask RP Singh, this is what Aam Aadmi Party is saying, that Manish Sisodia has been questioned multiple occasions. The first FIR was registered 8 months ago. You've done raids, whatever documents, evidence, etc. has been collected. He's not a flight risk. Why the need to arrest? Prithvi Reddy and the Aam Aadmi Party saying that the only reason you're doing this is because of pure political vendetta.
Well, Zaka, thank you for inviting me over your show. But your friend from the Aam Aadmi Party has admitted that cartelization did happen. I mean, although he said it can't be inquired under this domain of CBI, it should be inquired into some different domain, but he has accepted it. Thank you, sir. And I am hopeful that CBI and the courts are hearing this. One. Secondly, Zaka, they are saying that CBI took some 7-8 months or 10 months to take remand of Manish Sisodia. Oh, sir, the case was filed, the FIR was lodged, charge sheet was filed. So do Manish Sisodia have time to go to court and get the case quashed? I mean, he could have gone to court saying that this is all falsehood. They are trying to implicate me, and then would have asked the court to quash the case. I mean, they are spending almost, I've been told, into 25 crore rupees for legal fees to defend them in the courts, and that too from the public exchequer. So they could have spent another 25 crore rupees and asked the case to be quashed by hiring one of the best legal minds. But they knew it. And last but not the least, remember Mr. Kejriwal from last 1 year had been saying that 2 people will be arrested, 2 ministers will be arrested, Satinder Jain and Sisodia. He never took name of Gopal Rai, neither of Kailash Gehlot. Why? Because he knew that these are the 2 who are involved in thick and thin of the complete game of the money transfer and Hawala transfers and all that scam.
Okay, so let me go across to Aman Lekhi as well as Abhishek Sudhir.
Very small point.
Sir, I'll come back to you.
Very small point.
Give me some time. Let me come back to you. The other 2 guests.
I'll finish that.
Okay.
Vijay Nair, the key kingpin in the complete case, was allocated minister's bungalow. He was staying in Mr. Gehlot, the Minister of the Transport's bungalow. Mr. Gehlot never came to that bungalow.
Okay.
And whole of the operation was being led by Vijay Nair from that bungalow.
So, okay, let me ask Aman Lekhi this. The CBI's contention is that monies were paid in lieu of changing the excise policy, favouring private players, and these monies then found their way back to the Aam Aadmi Party election funds for Goa as well as other states. How easy or difficult, Mr. Lekhi, would this be to be able to prove in a court of law that Manish Sisodia or any other public official who was involved in the change of policy at that time was a beneficiary of these kickbacks?
Well, that depends upon the credibility of the evidence. Whether difficult or not depends upon what material the CBI has. But I want to flag 2 or 3 things. One, the dispute or the confusion as to the difference between lobbying and bribery. Lobbying is permissible, bribery is not. This case actually hinges in the balance because it suggests that a facet of participative justice is procured through payment. If it has been procured through payment, then lobbying is transformed into bribery, in which case it may be a penal offence. But the issue which we have to necessarily confront here is they rely upon this on the evidence of an approver. Now, because they rely on the evidence of an approver, law presumes that as the approver is concerned, the approver cannot be trusted because his participant is criminous. That is, he is involved in the crime himself and he is actually traded for his freedom. So while it is competent for the court to act upon it, courts usually don't rely only on the approver. So you cannot basically say there is an approver statement, and the approver statement by itself will not help implicate Mr. Sisodia, because you will have to have material apart from what the approver says for the purposes of satisfying yourself that what the approver says is correct. That said, there are 2 other aspects that are important. Vijay Nair has been arrested. He is part of the conspiracy. He was arrested sometime last year prior to the charge sheet, I think. And admittedly, there is no reference to Sisodia in the first charge sheet or the supplementary charge sheet. Now, why is this important? Purely from legal perspective, I'm not getting into the politics of it because AAP and BJP are loggerheads on this point. In law, there's a difference between a general conspiracy and a separate conspiracy. Like, separate conspiracy is I and you combine to do an illegal act, which will be different from, say, the two AAP and BJP spokesperson combining to do an illegal act. Unlikely, but that's just an example. Illegal act. But general conspiracy is all of us agree that we have to do an illegal act. This case is of a general conspiracy, that they combine for the purposes of benefit to themselves. So it's a general conspiracy. If it was a general conspiracy and the charge sheet was filed without the investigation being complete, then that was an incomplete charge sheet. And because an incomplete charge sheet, that means in the absence of investigation, they proceeded against Nair, and then against in the absence of complete investigation, they proceeded against the others. Now, if they are proceeding against others without a complete investigation, then the investigation itself is flawed. And if the investigation is flawed, from it to infer that the person against whom the accusation is made is in fact prima facie guilty becomes suspect, because this is an aspect which has not been dealt with. So neither the approver nor the filing of the charge sheet can in any way assist whoever is actually saying that there is in fact culpability. And in this context, because this has been in the public domain itself, to say with conviction that this is so, of course, we just have to, I don't know what material it is, it becomes by reason of the manner, the steps which have gone into it, some questions have been raised which in fact put in jeopardy the unequivocal nature of an accusation that the question of guilt is convincingly existing. So that is something which becomes slightly shaky and dodgy.
Okay, let me ask Abhishek Sudhir this. I mean, whether or not there were kickbacks paid and whether or not they found their way to Aam Aadmi Party funds, and if that was used in elections, that of course has to be proven in a court of law. But admittedly, by the Aam Aadmi Party's own admission, when it revoked this policy and went back to the old excise policy, this was in July of last year, just days after this case was announced, and the CBI said that it's probing the Liquorgate scam. That cabinet note says that one of the reasons they were withdrawing this policy was because it led to cartelization. The number of liquor vends in Delhi went from 400 to 800 plus, and whatever profits were being made actually went to private players and not to the exchequer. If you look at the license fees differential, there was a differential of 890 crore loss to the exchequer between the license fees, the last license fees under the old policy and the license fees under the new policy in the year 21-22. So whether or not there was corruption, certainly it was a flawed policy which led to a loss to the exchequer. And it increased, admittedly, if you're doubling the number of liquor events, alcoholism will also go up in the capital.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Mr. Lekhi took the words out of my mouth. He's absolutely right that there's a very fine line between lobbying and bribery. Now, if there was lobbying which led to a flawed policy, I don't think there's any criminal act. But if there was lobbying which led to a flawed policy and that lobbying was accompanied by kickbacks or payment, of course, that becomes bribery and there is a case to answer. Now, Mr. Lekhi did not speak about bail. So I just want to focus on bail for a second, Mr. Jacob, because in a case like this, the legal and the political can't be delinked, right? They're pretty much intertwined. If you look at the legal issue today that the CBI's lawyers raised in the special CBI court, what they basically said was that Mr. Sisodia is giving us evasive replies on the issue of why the profit margin for wholesalers was increased from 5 to 12%. Now, this very same profit margin was approved, incidentally, by the complainant in the case. The holder of the office of the LG is Vinay Saxena, but it was approved by Anil Baijal when he was LG. So Mr. Baijal also has questions to answer. Incidentally, this very policy was in the public domain for 21 days. The Bharatiya Janata Party did not raise any objections to it. So proving that this was not just a case of lobbying and bribery, I feel the CBI has its task cut out. Quick point on bail. There are three considerations for the grant of bail.
One 30-second intervention. No,
if I could just...
The change...
You gave Mr. Lekhi...
Fair enough.
If I could just speak on bail, please.
Okay. You can, but just give me a 10-second intervention.
Yeah.
Which is, it's not just the question of the profit margin for private players increasing from 5 to 12. The CBI is trying to make the case that in lieu of that change of policy, kickbacks were given to Vijay Nair and then subsequently to the Aam Aadmi Party. That's the case that they are making out against
Absolutely.
Manish Sisodia.
Absolutely. So I think they have something like 8 approvers in the case. Charge sheets have been filed. As Mr. Lekhi said, the investigation is flawed. If you're saying that Manish Sisodia is the kingpin, why was he not arrested earlier? Now that you've arrested him, there are 3 requirements for a denial of bail. The first is you must be prima facie guilty, right? It must appear that the accused is guilty. The second is the accused must be a flight risk. And the third is destruction of evidence. Now, the CBI has not raised any of these issues in the court today. All they've said is Sisodia is giving evasive replies. But when you give evasive replies, you can't expect an accused to incriminate himself. Okay. And it's a constitutional right under Article 20. Manish Sisodia has the right not to incriminate himself. So just because he doesn't want to incriminate himself, you can't ask for his remand. They said we will subject him to intense interrogation. What does that mean? I don't know. That's why one suspects there could be political motives behind
either the case made out against him is so strong prima facie, or he's a flight risk, or he has the ability to influence witnesses or tamper evidence. And since this case was registered 8 months ago, most of the other accused are in custody of the CBI or in judicial remand. The evidence has already been collected by the CBI, and clearly he's the Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi. He's not a flight risk. Why then has he been arrested now, 8 months after the case was registered?
Well, Zaka, I would have appreciated you should have got a CBI spokesperson here to answer all those questions. But yes, Abhishek Sudhir ji, I don't know what sort of fees you charge. But please do send a message to Mr. Kejriwal. He should hire you in the next hearing and help Mr. Sisodia. And probably you can be of help to Mr. His another minister, jail minister, who is in jail. So help them out instead of debating. West court would have gone through all this, and after that court has given them a 5-day remand. And again, then there are we have been told there is a case of evidence being demolished or had been tampered with, and also that man changed some 16 mobile phones and 4 SIM cards. Who does that? Dhaka today, whatever riches you have, you don't change 16 mobile phones and 4 SIM cards in a year or less than a year. So obviously there is a case, and then let CBI pursue this, and all those friends who want to help Sisodia ji, please, on fee or without fee, please go and help him.
Okay, so Prithvi Reddy, again, this is by way of CBI sources. What they're saying is the file which showed that the profit margin for private wholesalers be increased from 5% to 12%, the excise minister does not know where that file is. The excise department does not know where that file is. Surely that makes it look fishy. You have recommended a policy change against what the GOM had prescribed. Where is the file?
I will challenge you to walk into the office of any minister across the country and ask him where is a particular file. You know that he is handling, by your own words, very many portfolios, especially at the moment. The number of files a minister has to handle will be multiple, and you must accept that if you ask for a particular file, he may not have a ready-made answer. He may have to locate the file. Now, I just wanted to add a couple of things. When it came to the matter of bail, I'm asking, when you arrest a person, you have to prima facie have some trail of this 100 crores which the BJP has made the CBI imagine. Mr. R.P. Singh continues to say, fair investigation, etc. If there was going to be any chance of destruction of evidence, why did you not arrest him for the past 8 months? If evidence was not destroyed in the past 8 months, is it now that it's become suddenly a threat? Number two, for the past 8 months, honoring the fact that there was an ongoing investigation, he has appeared for investigation before, and he has not traveled out of the country specifically for the reason that this investigation was on. So they have no justification at all for the arrest.
What about the 18 mobile phones and 4 SIM cards? What's your answer to that?
Very honestly, replacing a telephone instrument cannot amount to crime. I don't have an answer because it wasn't me who changed the phones. But if you tell me that on the suspicion of changing telephones, that you accuse someone of taking a bribe and have the CBI arrest them and demand for 5 days custody, is it going to change that situation of the phones?
So let me go back to Aman Lekhi, and I think the point that a couple of the guests were trying to say is this, that this is a case of Prevention of Corruption Act. Section 7 has been invoked. That's one of the charges against Manish Sisodia. If you have to show money trail in court that policy was changed in lieu of kickbacks, how easy or difficult would that be on the question of money trail, Mr. Lekhi? Because admittedly by the CBI's own comments in the court today, out of this 100 crore, a lot of this money went into election campaigning in Goa. And you know as well as I do that most election campaigning in our country, even today, happens on cash.
Well, because the criminal case, an accusation is made, the prosecuting agency has to corroborate what it says with material evidence which is convincing enough for the court to act upon it. What is very material here is the application for remand, because please understand, remand is never mechanical. The law is that when you make an application for remand, it is not given as a matter of course. That's the reason why there are arguments. You said 2 hours arguments. So the court has to examine whether there is cause for sending a person to the police for the purposes of joining investigation, because this is police custody, different from judicial custody where a person goes to jail. He is going to aid the police in investigating. But investigating what? The police has to set it out in the remand application. Now, if the case was of a money trail, then in that event, without in fact giving details as to what it is, nevertheless broad particulars about what it is, was necessarily a requirement of the remand application. So if the remand application is silent and doesn't in fact give the particulars about the money trail, then the occasion for the court to act on the remand application to probe the money trail doesn't arise, because the material on which the court has to act is non-existent. In elections, we all know what actually happens, but the question is, whatever may be happening in the elections, when the matter comes to court in a criminal case, and you actually put a person's liberty in jeopardy on the basis of an accusation which is serious, to suggest that there is money which is involved, it behoves the agency to satisfy the person against whom the accusation is made, which is natural justice, that the accusation made against him warrants an answer. Because the question of evasive will come if an answer is necessary. If an answer is not necessary because the material is absent, the person will not be evasive because there is no occasion to answer.
All right.
So, coming to your question, merely because it is difficult doesn't mean that you have not to give the particulars, and unless you give the particulars, there is got no case in court. And if you want to investigate a person for the basis of that particular requirement, then you have to set it out at least prima facie remand application. And whatever I read in the newspapers, I don't think the remand application has any particulars or details about this.
Okay, Abhishek, Sudhir, I'll give you the final word. More than the legalities and whether this case will stand scrutiny of a court of law, I think that is a separate matter. What has actually happened is political. The biggest fallout of this is political, and that is that the Aam Aadmi Party, which was born out of the India Against Corruption movement, today people are looking at the Aam Aadmi Party and saying if Mr. Sisodia and Mr. Jain, two of the most important ministers in this government, are behind bars, at least in the court of public opinion, their images have been tarnished. The Aam Aadmi Party's, as Mr. Kejriwal keeps saying, Kattar Imandar image has been tarnished. Today people are saying they are just like everyone else.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Zaka, just in a lighter vein about the phones, don't forget about Pegasus. So maybe Mr. Sisodia was being ultra cautious. We never know. But that was just in a lighter vein. Yeah, I mean, what you say at least is a plausible argument. Is it a very compelling argument? We'll have to wait. Mr. Sisodia and Mr. Jain have to do everything they can to clear their name in a court of law. And we saw this with Prime Minister Modi as well. He cleared his name in a court of law in 2002. And today, I respect the verdict of the Supreme Court. So it's up to Mr. Jain and Mr. Sisodia to clear their name. What I will say is that the CBI suddenly has shown an urgency in the case. They should have done this a long time ago. In fact, they summoned Mr. Sisodia 1 week ago on the 19th of February. They gave him an extra week to appear before them. So where is the question of destruction of evidence? They have not shown any alacrity, any urgency in the case. So once again, the question is raised, why act like this? Is it something to do with the MCD elections? Are there political considerations?
Other than the delay of this 8 months, is there any other argument you have against the arrest happening now?
I mean, absolutely, I feel that there is, in terms of arrest, absolutely, he is not going to incriminate himself. Manish Sisodia has a right not to incriminate himself. He has a right, if you will, to lie. Of course, they can then go after him for giving false evidence if he does that, but you can't put him behind bars because he's not answering your questions. That Mr. Lekhi will tell you, there's a long list of case law on right to self-incriminate. And Mr. Sisodia is not going to say he committed the crime. So do your job, do the investigation, prosecute them to the fullest extent, and let him run the government, let him present the budget.
R.P. Singh.
Well, Zaka, I'm not a legal person. So, but what all I could understand from the what has happened during last 2-3 days is that there are witnesses who are turned approver. Also, and there is a government witness, there's a government officer who has given a witness under section 164. So, they need to be confronted with Mr. Sisodia, and probably that process need custody, and in which Mr. Sisodia will be confronted with Vijay Nair, one of the government officials, and one of the approvers, so that from there further lead can be taken and that the case can be pursued. But again, whoever want to give good advice to them on fee or without fee, please help Mr. Kejriwal, because next will be Mr. Kejriwal in this case.
Mr. Singh, you're telling us about the CBI strategy. You're a government spokesperson and you're telling us about CBI strategy. How do you have this information, sir? How do you have this information? How do you know what the CBI is going to do?
Did I say anything about the CBI strategy, sir? I said what I learned from the newspapers.
You said they're going to confront.
Sir, I'll send you the newspaper cuttings, sir. I'll send you the newspaper cuttings for your references.
Sure.
All right. I got to wrap up. Thank you very much to all our guests. We'll see how this story plays out. Like I said, the battle will be fought both in the legal courts as well as, of course, in the court of public opinion. And the verdicts in either of those places could be quite different and quite stark in and of itself. But let's now shift focus to the